Time, yes. Okay, good evening. Dear friends, comrades, colleagues, thank you so much for coming. My name is László Andor. I'm the Secretary General of FEPS, the Foundation for European Progressive Studies, also one of the editors and authors of the Progressive Yearbook, which we are going to celebrate tonight. I hope you can all make yourself comfortable relatively quickly, and we can start our traditional program. I'm very proud to say that this is a tradition, and we already have had 5 years with calling you together, inviting you to the FEPS headquarters, and discuss in a relaxed fashion at the start of the year what has been most important in the previous year and what we consider to be very, very important for the year which is just ahead of us. The very first step I would like to make is to invite our president, Maria João Rodrigues, to welcome you and open the program. Maria.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And warm welcome to all of you. It's so great to have so many people coming to FEPS in this, in fact, tradition. László, you are right. And I was supposed to make a kind of overview of last year, and I will make it, but in 2 minutes, because I'd like to use most of my time to speak about what is ahead of us. And I think you expect me to do so, isn't it? So, look, when it comes the overview of last year, in the end, it was not easy. It was quite tough, but we should be quite proud, because in spite of the difficulties, we remain clearly the second most important political family in Europe, and we managed to have an very important group inside the European Parliament, a good group of commissioners in key portfolios, and a new post we never had in our history as a political family, which is the presidency of the European Council. So we can make European politics. We can really have an important role in the way ahead, also involving all our other political actors and many, many allies across civil society. We remain an important political movement in the European project. And when we were elected, we came with commitments. And they are very clear in our heads. One is to go on pushing for a European Green Deal with social justice, but it remains central for our agenda. The second is to go on implementing the European Pillar of Social Rights. So these are 2 big flagships coming from us. And then we have a third one, which is to reshape the digital transformation, not only with the new regulations, but a new capacity to innovate. And most of all, protecting our democracy, because we have many concerns now, and rightly so. But beyond this, we knew that we have important historical tasks in our hands, tasks for the future of the European Union, because we have a war in our continent, and we need to support Ukraine and to bring a credible and strong ceasefire deal to Ukraine while preparing for enlargement involving many other countries, because they deserve to be part of the European Union. So we knew that we had very important tasks in our hands. But then, and that's why now I need to go with another issue in my intervention of opening, we were confronted with Trump's inauguration speech, plus a full package of operational executive orders. Well, we were expecting something strong, but now we really need to understand what is behind this. This is a risk, in fact, of going to a new era. And so let me make a very clear assessment of this, because we have, first of all, Trump phasing out the Green Deal in the United States. He does believe we need a Green Deal. Secondly, when it comes social concerns, let's not have illusions. It seems to be keen on protecting jobs for workers with tariffs and with a strong control of migration. Nevertheless, be prepared for something very tough regarding basic public social expenditure in the United States. This will start being reduced and streamlined by something you can already identify, who? Elon Musk, dealing with this process of restructuring the public services in the United States. But more than this, what is shocking for us as Europeans is that he announced, without any kind of internal problem from his team, that United States can disengage from many bodies of the multilateral system on climate, dealing with health, dealing with taxation. So we have really a systematic attack of something very dear for our hearts, which is a strong, effective, and fair multilateral system. So let's not have illusions. We have a particular responsibility. And many people across the world are now looking to Europe. What is Europe supposed to do in face of this? And I believe that it's up to us, progressives, to take the lead of developing a full-fledged European response to the Trump's agenda. And from my viewpoint, there are some already clear priorities. Of course, we will start working on this, but one, from my viewpoint, is to prevent a tariffs war. Because the best way to protect jobs and quality jobs in Europe is to prevent a tariffs war, which will be a lose-lose game for everybody. Secondly, is really to push forward with the European Green Deal. We need to move forward with our targets, because the climate challenge is there, and we cannot just deny it. Then we have another one, which is about the multilateral system. Yes, we need to reform it, but we need to support it. And also combine this with stronger strategic partnerships Europe should set with other parts of the world. But finally, there is also a big challenge for us, which is about democracy. Because we see how far Trump's people, and particularly the example of Elon Musk, they dare to interfere in democracy, in the democratic choices across the world, including here in Europe. They start in Romania, now they are targeting Germany, and we cannot just accept this. So we need to build up a new critical infrastructure to protect our democracy and our media system, to make sure that we have real democratic and plural debate. Because let's not have illusions. What we see is that this conservative leading team in the United States is planning to use digital tools to build up a new way to dominate in the world, combining to the role of the currency, the trade, the technology, the military. Now, on the top of this, they are putting a lot of effort on the digital, because this is the tool to dominate in the future. If you dominate the digital, you dominate almost everything. Global supply chains, education, and democracy. So I believe that Europe needs to rise to this challenge, and it's up to us, particularly progressive family, to lead the way. So what I can tell you today as a pre-announcement of possible decisions of FEPS bodies is that we FEPS will collaborate with all the progressives across Europe to bring about a real alternative to this Trump agenda, because we don't like this kind of world. This is completely the opposite of our vision about what should be our way to live in a peaceful and fair world. So count on us. We are very proud to have this large community of people from all over sectors working with FEPS. We managed to bring about, I think, a very important foundation. Our scale is now much larger. You can think about each year 100 events, 100 publications, 100 projects. So this is already quite large. Many thousands of people collaborating with us. And so we will now use this capacity really to work with the progressives across Europe and to build the kind of response, the kind of alternative people are waiting for us to produce. So you can count on us, and many thanks for coming today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria, for this overview of the political landscape and the dramatic elements of 2024 and how it has been developing. We're going to adjust the voice in a second. Coming back to the product, because indeed the yearbook itself is supposed to be about the stock taking. What are the most important imprints of this evolving landscape? Which we would need to discuss further, which we would need to preserve. And 6 years ago, when the idea of this yearbook came, indeed the question was whether we would need an additional volume for stock taking, but also preserving the developments of a given year. We are very proud of the Progressive Post. As you know, FEPS produces a magazine. It's also a tradition. We print it 3 times a year, but the yearbook has on the top of that an added value because it provides a better synthesis and collects a lot of details, a lot of information, which probably would need to be kept on your shelf. And if necessary, you can go back to it. What happened in 2020? What happened in 2021? And we have, interestingly, authors here who contributed to the very first yearbook, but also this time around. Without telling more, I would like to invite my colleagues to launch a video which will present the 6 years and 6 volumes through visualized, mediatized way, because we live in the world of the mediatization. So let's start with that. Thank you very much, Rodrigo, for the presentation. So now you have been manipulated, right? Because if you just get the visuals, then you get some highlights and you will be easily manipulated. So let's move to the words and discuss a little bit what is the structure, what is the concept behind this year's volume. And then I will also invite 3 of the authors to have a conversation about the content, what they thought would need to be written about especially. Every book starts with the front cover. This is no exception. And what does this front cover reveal to you? Probably even from a distance you can see this is pretty much a broken picture. Right? So you have a feeling that something is broken, not broken down, right? There is a big difference also in English between broken down and broken, but there is a fragmentation. You would need to put together the picture from the elements, maybe from the same elements, maybe some of the elements would need to be different than in the past. But also in the video, you saw a lot of drama. Sadly, in many parts of the world, some close to us, some more distant. The violence has not stopped or even escalated last year. And of course, it would be our desire, as the president also said, to see the end of all this violence in the world. Now, when you edit a book like this is also about selection. When does this selection start? I can tell you the secrets of the production process. It starts after the summer break, when with colleagues we get together and we already try to guess what's going to be the synthesis, what's going to be the most essential points. I would like to indeed mention that three of us form especially this core group of the Agnieszka is over there, who is our Director of Training and Research, and also Hedvig Justo, who is Senior Research Fellow as the Editor-in-Chief of the Progressive Yearbook. So the three of us are mostly responsible for the content, and also indeed agreeing after long discussions what should be the main issues. And I was trying to find a kind of organizing logic. There are three categories of issues. One category is where on the specific issue there is broad consensus in our political family. There are other types of issues, category 2, where in our political family there's a pluralism of ideas and people can have different thoughts. And there's a third category on which in our circles there isn't much knowledge and maybe the issues have been a little bit sidelined for some time. You find examples of all. And for example, on issues which you also saw in the video, farmers' demonstration. Maybe we didn't pay enough attention. Maybe this is politically more important than we would have thought in the previous years. Maybe this is also going to be important for the future when the discussions on the multi-annual financial framework will start and people will start to think about how the EU budget will be different in the future than in the past. So there are issues where you would need to highlight because it's, in essence, it's more conflictual. We knew migration is conflictual, right? It's not a surprise. So we included, because of the Migration Pact, a chapter on migration, where I think there is more or less full consensus, is how we judge Donald Trump, what we think about him, what we think about this challenge. Probably we would easily agree on most of the points, but still it's so important and so dramatic, and there was so much expectation before November what's going to happen in the United States, perhaps the United States election being even more important than the European. I'm not supposed to say this. But let's say not more important, but more consequential, no? Than some of the Europeans. But definitely now, every week we see how it unfolds and what this change actually generates. So of course we have to pay a lot of attention to all this. And it's also a tradition to have country studies. We always pick some countries which might be in the given period somehow more important or novel than others. And before this February, I think you will read with interest what is written about Germany. I think at the time when this was decided, we didn't know that there would be in February an election, but somehow we got it right. And indeed, we always end with predictions. I invite you to also read the previous year's predictions, just to see how the authors managed to find out on different fields, whether it is policy, whether it is conflict, whether it is elections, what might happen in the next year. But even 1 year ago, there was an article about the politicization of the Paris Olympics. And I think it turned out to be very interesting. It might be an interesting read ex post as well. So with this introduction and overview, I really wholeheartedly recommend it to you. You will spot some differences as compared to the previous structure. For example, the election analysis went much more quantitative. I think it's an interesting chapter which will provide a lot of food for thought, a kind of detailed quantitative analysis of the most important developments about the European Parliament election, just really to see what shifts have been happening in terms of electoral preferences and how it manifested itself. It definitely was for us more important than many other elections in the rest of the world, and also rather consequential. After this introduction, I would like to invite the three contributors, three authors who are with us in the following order. Giacomo Benedetto, who arrived from the United Kingdom, from London. Yes. Would you like to take a seat on the stage? I will invite all of you there, and then you will speak one after the other. Karolina Leaković, thank you so much for coming from Croatia. You contributed a chapter about the politics of Croatia, and indeed it will be very interesting to hear, especially after the very consequential presidential elections. And Vassilis Ntousas from German Marshall Fund, former colleague of in FEPS, and thank you so much for joining again and remaining very, very close to FEPS, and indeed you will have the cherry on the cake, which is, of course, what has been happening in the United States. The question should be the same to all three of you. A little bit to introduce to the audience your own chapter, why you think this is so important that it deserves more attention.
Well, good evening, and thank you very much to FEPS for the invitation. I've been writing about the budget of the EU probably for more than 10 years, and I've researched it during the period of the financial crisis. So, in fact, I'm thinking now that's probably 15 years. Yes, and the remarkable point about the budget is that it's something that people think it's something financial and in less controversial times not so interesting. But the budget is what allows the European Union to be more than just an area of free and economic exchange. And this is why, let us make no mistake, the right, including the populist right, don't like it. In the old days, the old liberals and the old Christian Democrats supported the budget as well. Their support has not become something zero, but it has diminished. And that alliance, a centrist alliance, including the liberals and the Christian Democrats, and I use the word Christian Democrats rather than conservatives, I use that intentionally, that has frayed. And so what we see is now a budget that is more contested and has been kept artificially small for political reasons throughout the challenges of the last 15 years. And the challenges that we face now are perhaps larger than ever, given the security situation and the new administration in Washington and the unpredictability of our times. How the budget or the European Union have responded to this very controlled budget structure, which is kept at only 1% of gross national income, sometimes it's gone up to about 1.1%, is by innovating with temporary funds. And some of these funds have been very important, and they've covered subjects such as financial assistance mechanisms during the financial crisis. Some of those mechanisms still exist and could be activated again in the future while being dormant for the rest of the time. A fund after the crisis, which was very significant, called EFSI, the European Fund for Structural Investments, which was based on private sector lenders together with public banks providing funds for investment in infrastructure. There was some involvement in that project from the EU budget. And then the most famous one that perhaps is best known to Europeans is Next Generation, or the RRF. That too is outside the budget, but very strongly related to it. Like the other ones I've mentioned, it's also temporary. This year, or rather last year in 2024, we saw the first ever increase in the size of the core budget during its planning period. The increase was not particularly large in total numbers, but it was an increase. And that increase was dedicated notably towards increasing the financing for the European Defence Fund and setting up a budgetary reserve for Ukraine, responding to the most urgent of the challenges. And so we can see that in the context of an emergency, the EU, even when we have populist and conservative governments around the table, is able to make these types of compromises, these types of changes. They're not the sort that progressives would prefer. They lack the ambition to deal with the challenges around climate change and the digital economy that we're seeing, but they have been achieved before. What will happen now? We have a commission where the centre-right is more present than the centre-left, and we can expect a relatively conservative proposal, at least initially, for the MFF in the spring when it happens. We don't know what will be there, but we hope that it will be something that can respond, whether through the budget itself or through funds outside the budget, to the most immediate challenges that we're facing.
Thank you so much, and I can tell the audience that it is Giacomo who contributed to the very first Progressive Yearbook and also this one. Thank you so much for both contributions. Yes, feel free. Karolina, your chapter is about social democracy in Croatia. Do you have good news or bad news?
That's a really complicated question. It's both, I think. I cannot compete. Croatia cannot compete with the views on the US politics or the European budget. But what I think you might have in mind when you asked me to contribute to the yearbook, and thank you very much for that, is maybe to bring kind of a peripheral point of view. I mean, the European periphery point of view. And of course, I did not have the ambition to write a scholarly article or a scientifically based article, as some other people around the table or on the panel. But I wanted to maybe give a very personal overview of what happened in Croatia in the last 12 months, because I think that's also what might be important for some other countries in the EU. For example, so we had 3 elections last year. Parliamentary elections, European elections, presidential elections. Unfortunately, Social Democrats lost parliamentary elections for the third time in a row. So we have been in opposition for quite some time now. It's not only due to our shortcomings, but also because the other progressive forces, be it Greens or Liberals, who were our traditional coalition partners, did not see what was at stake. So did not want to actually form pre-election coalitions to also maybe be able to somehow increase our support and then form the government. But on the other hand, our prime minister, who comes from the EPP, HDZ, formed the government with the right-wingers. I cannot call them far-right, but some people call them far-right as well. So it was a coalition. It is the government that was formed in Croatia in April this year that somehow anticipated what might happen in some other countries as well, not only in the very core of the European Union, but also on the periphery. I think that's very important for understanding Croatian politics, because our long-standing governing party is very much embedded in the EPP structure. So Prime Minister Plenković is quite a different figure than what you might have expect from an EPP leader coming from Eastern Europe. And it's also something that we have been struggling with for such a long time, because he's a pro-European guy. he's an ex-diplomat. It's very hard to somehow, attack him with the same kind of rhetorics or same kind of narrative that some other Eastern or Central European EPP politicians or prime ministers could be confronted with. But fortunately, we had the presidential elections in less than a month ago, and our former leader and former Prime Minister Milanović won again. And I think so he's now in his second mandate. He won more than 1 million votes, so 75% of our electorate voted for him. And it is a puzzle for me, and not only for me, but for more informed political analysts as well. How come that our former prime minister, who lost elections in 2016, all of a sudden now has been voted not only by progressive voters, but he's also appealing to other voters, including those that vote for those right of the center. So it's something that we, as social democrats in Croatia, need to understand, and maybe to see how we can also not go there, but bring some voters who are disenfranchised, who are actually not participating in the elections. And that's something we have to take care of.
Maybe to make Croatia great again. Vassilis, you bring us to the non-European but still somewhat consequential territory.
Yeah, somewhat. I think it's a good thing you started by saying you selected a few cases that we need to, that you would like us to explain why we should focus on. I don't think we're running this risk with the US. I think the spotlight that is on the case study now and for the next 4 years will be blinding in many ways. Just before starting, I want to make a disclaimer. I'm speaking entirely on a personal capacity. And I also want to thank FEPS for the invitation, the entire FEPS family for continuing with this tradition, and of course the FEPS team that is behind the book, but also today's event. So many thanks indeed for the invitation. László, and Maria João, you were both right. We live in a different era. In many ways since November 5th, but certainly since January 20th. You can read in the chapter a little bit about a first diagnosis, if you want, as to how I felt Trump won. But I thought now it makes more sense to focus on the future, because I should start by saying Happy New Year. It already feels like this year has been a century. We're now on day 8, 9 of the Trump administration. We've had a very muscular vision of domestic and foreign policy encapsulated in the inaugural address of the new president. We have the confirmation of some people from his cabinet, including U.S. Secretary of State Rubio. But we also have, what you said, László, a blizzard of executive orders. And depending on where you sit on the political spectrum, part of it might look petty, vindictive, small. But part of it, and it has to be said that, is him doing justice to what he promised time and again on the campaign trail. Part of it concerns the foreign policy aspect, and we saw there two words that I think will matter, will be consequential. Territorial expansion. If he does justice to this announcement, he will be the first president to have done so in more than, to put really his mind to it, in more than a century. Part of it had a domestic audience in mind. Part of it was more substantive. Part of it was very symbolic. But all of it, all of what we've seen so far, is characterized by one single thing, and that is a dire sense of urgency. As I say in the chapter, I think the impact of the second Trump administration will be much more felt than the first one. Mr. Trump knows how to handle the levers of power now. He yields unprecedented power. He has, the Republicans hold a trifecta. There is a strong conservative majority in the Supreme Court. He has also reshaped the Republican Party since 2016 a lot. So now it's a party that is much more aligned to his own ideology and aesthetics in politics. And of course, he himself has chosen very by design to surround himself by people who are much more aligned to him, to his ideology, his way of speaking about politics, of doing politics, but also a lot of people that owe their political rise to him personally, and whatever that means in terms of loyalty going forward. Where does this leave Europe? I think if in 2016, and I think László, you mentioned it, Europe was shocked. My feeling right now is that Europe is far less shocked, far more scared. I've spoken to EAS people, I've spoken to many people in the parliament, certainly at the commission. It's not just a policy question, there's a fundamental political question mark hanging over any decision, any discussion the EU will be having with the White House, with the new Trump administration. I think this is because of two reasons. One is purely internal. The re-election of Trump, the beginning of a second Trump term, coincides with a moment of profound fragility and insecurity for Europe. So it's not all good on this side of the Atlantic to begin with. We have the rise of the far right, we have really dense political times, many question marks from a political analytical perspective in all countries. How is it possible that this and this happened on the same year, in the same month? We have societal fissures being deepened. We have foreign adversaries being much more aggressive, much more ambitious about what they want to do inside the EU. I'm talking hybrid, I'm talking information manipulation attacks by Russia, by China, by others. We have a bloody war continuing on European soil, and we have a lot of wars and insecurities and injustice all across the neighborhood. And of course, to bring it to your perspective, László, we have a lot of economic insecurity as well.
Yes.
So
I'm supposed to ask.
Yes.
I'm supposed to ask, is there a silver lining?
There is a silver lining. I just want to say that we gotta contextualize what the problem is. We had in our bingo cards as Europeans before the election or right after the election, the fear of tariffs, Ukraine, NATO, and the democratic impact that Trump's election will have. Will it undermine EU unity? Will it embolden, galvanize movements and leaders that are aligned with his MAGA movement? Nobody had in their bingo cards Greenland. Nobody had in their bingo cards direct undue influence by US stakeholders, and I'm not going to name them, in critical elections like in Germany. So I think we're a little bit caught off guard. Silver lining. Trump 2 will not be just doom and gloom. There will be openings. In domestic terms, he's just announced that he will resign green subsidies. This could be a benefit for EU industries, EU producers. If the EU is smart, quick, and effective to provide the regulatory fix to exploit that opening. On foreign policy, Trump has said that, or he certainly implied that he's not that interested in areas like Latin America. We have the EU-Mercosur deal, regardless of its flaws. We have Global Gateway, regardless of its multiple flaws. These are levers we can use, and we can provide expertise if we're fast and quick and effective to exploit that opening. Trump himself appears to be at the peak of power, but the US political system is structured in a way that power tends to slip away fast as well. Let's go back to 2008, election of Barack Obama, unified control by the Democrats in Congress. Midterms in 2010, Democrats losing unified control. The same thing could happen in 2026, which could turn Mr. Trump into a lame duck. And one more thing, for any of these openings to to be exploited for the EU to be able to take advantage of. We need to do things that I know FEPS, the entire think tank sector, has been writing papers time and again. We need to invest in things like security and defense, not to placate the US, but actually to defend EU security. We need to learn to speak the language of power, as former High Representative Borrell said time and again. And we need to be united. And for the next Trump term, this will not be a value, this will be a survival tactic. One last point that the EU needs to have, we need to have a sense of humor as well, which I think is critical here. And I'm going to finish with a quote by Churchill, who said, the Americans will always do the right thing if they exhaust every other course of action. So let's hope that that's the case. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Can I have just one follow-up question to both Karolina and Giacomo as well? We have 1 minute for this. Is the euro still politicized in Croatia? Because Croatia has been the latest addition to the eurozone. And of course, at that stage, by definition, there's a political debate about this question. Is it still playing a role?
It's not playing a role. I mean, it was never a real political debate in terms of between the mainstream parties. So it was outside of the parliament, I'd say, or outside of the. It was never a question, actually, for Croatia.
Consensual.
Yes, it was consensual. But we
just wait and see. Thank you. Anything to add?
Just to say that we don't live better because we have euro, but not because of euro.
I see. Okay. We can discuss it later. Giacomo, you mentioned this very interesting so-called glass ceiling, right? It's in a way it's part of the culture of the MFF already. But how do you see this, especially in the light of the experience of the next generation? Are we going to see a glass ceiling in the long run and improvised additions if necessary? Or the glass ceiling can break and, let's say, more structural growth of the MFF could happen theoretically?
Well, listening to senior advisors and politicians from some of the countries that have been identified as frugals, I'm rather pessimistic, but then I wouldn't have foreseen at the beginning of 2020 the outcome that we had later that year of Next Generation. It's possible that we create not a reserve, but a de facto reserve in the budget, a mechanism that isn't actually a reserve that member states need to pay into for the moment, but which can be nevertheless activated quickly in response to emergencies, and a faster track mechanism for setting up funds for particular eventualities. We've heard a lot about a European Competitiveness Fund. This was in a slightly calmer period before Trump was elected. And whether it's Competitiveness Fund or the Defense Fund and contingencies in Ukraine, we'll have to see how they'll be financed, but they will and have to be financed in some way or other.
Thank you. That really was a silver lining. I think that reflects the creativity which indeed can be found in different participants of this MFF discussion already, and hopefully at a later stage this creativity will just grow. Thanks to all of you. This was a very short presentation opportunity, but I hope the audience is now inspired to read your chapters, but also the other chapters as well in the volume. And now I know what is coming next. What is coming next is that I would like to invite on stage the very good friend of FEPS, Gabriele Bischoff, member of the European Parliament. She's really close to our think tank, participated in a variety of FEPS events, and we are really grateful to your commitment to FEPS. And you didn't have a lot of time to look into this year's yearbook, but what you have seen and what you might have heard, what are your first impressions and what would you like to highlight?
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the yearbook. And I think you already made everyone curious, especially to have a look into it. And I would like to reiterate how important also for us as S&D Group the work you are doing is, and that it is always very important to work closely with each other, because in times like this, and I think Giacomo mentioned it very much, we are living in very different times, and we need really to stay very close together, have strong alliances if we want to be successful and if we want to overcome the challenges. But I have to say, I would like to start where Vassilis left it at the end. He said, we also need a sense of humor. And I liked very, very much, I think it's up to you, I liked very much the headline of your foreword for 2025, and I think we should all write it down. It says, bravery in a new world. And indeed, we need, all of us, a lot of bravery. And we all have this strange feeling that we first had when we read the book. Brave New World. And we are indeed in times 2025, where already on a day like this, and I'm German, it's an historic day, like this year, also with 20th of January will be an historic year. We will look back in 10 years and we will say 2025 was a changing point. And if we look at the challenges that Trump provides, and we already had enough challenges with Putin, with the war and everything, we can see, and I've seen you have a chapter on it, that Europe is not prepared. It didn't use the time well to prepare itself properly. I mean, it was not a total surprise. We could anticipate that this would happen. And if we need, and here I come back to the speeches, if we need to act fast, bold, and united, I have to say, and we will need that the European Union is not prepared for that. It is not prepared. And it will need to come to senses very fast, because it didn't use the time. I don't know how about you, we have seen it with Next Generation EU. The EU is not capable to reform in times where the tide is not so high, in normal times. But it can do huge steps when it is under enormous pressure. And I think we will see this also this year and in the coming year when we look at the MFF. I think negotiations on MFF are always brutal and hard. But this time, it will be worse than we have seen it in the past. And we have seen today, when I looked at this competitiveness compass thing, I can already see that we have a paradigm shift in the EU Commission. They did hide it until today, but after today, I think we know it. And all the promises they did before the hearings and even in the hearings are not worth the paper they are written on. Because they have a very limited perception of competitiveness and they will use it. And our perception in the MFF is to deliver to citizens and for the public good. But that's not the intention, I think, at the moment. And this is why we really have to have very good alliances. We really have to look for good strategies, and we are discussing this, how we are going to address this and how are we going to change this and with whom. I listened also very carefully, I think, on your historic perspective of alliances with Christian Democrats and also liberals, that you need these forces in the middle. And it's still, from my perspective, unclear how this will develop in the European Parliament. We don't know it. There are days when we think, okay, they will just go with the right wing and do what they want to do. There are other things when they realize it might be better to go with this alliance of the middle. It's not decided, but it will be essential what will happen in the next 5 years, that we try at least, if it's possible, to come back to this alliance of, I would call it, of rational policies and not of masculine, as we learned, sort of, and irrational populistic policies. That will be essential from my point of view, and I think the battle is not decided yet. That is, on one hand, the good thing, and on the other hand, it shows what the challenges are that we have here. Also, this question of will we be able to have enough investment to really have a European Union, also European companies, European public services that can deliver for the citizens. And nobody is talking about where the money should come from. But it's very clear, if we don't have new resources here, wherever they come from, we will not be able to deliver, but we might even go back to austerity policies, where I think many of us know what that implies. So I am looking into 25. Not only it's a good start to read the yearbook, and also with Croatia to see that it is very important also what happens on national level in the different member states. That if you want to understand Europe, you have to also look closer what is happening in member states, and also how these alliances with the far right, what impacts they have or can have, and possible answers of our political family. And in this sense, I was asked to have a short overview. I listened very carefully. I think on this basis, and also the book, we can have very good debates, and in the end we all have to have new strategies, because we have to be brave in the new world, but we also have really to realize that it's a new world. It's a new world in the parliament. The way how the parliament worked in the past is not existing anymore. We have to find new ways. We also have to find our new role, but also we have to be brave for good alliances, and we also have to be brave enough to choose our battles wisely.
Thank you so much, Gabi. This has been very kind, and I'm glad you are among the loyal readers of the yearbook, and obviously we would like to see you also in many other FEPS events, and please stay with us if your time allows. Thank you. Dear guests, it's also part of the tradition, and perhaps even the highlight of the presentation of the Progressive Yearbook, when we unveil the progressive person of the year. And this is again sometimes a difficult choice, but this time around we have been guided by the topic, which has been already mentioned or alluded to by several speakers, which is that in these times, of course, there are not many examples when the Social Democrats come on the top in an election, different types of election. It's really a hard work. Sometimes it takes a reconstruction of a political party or a political movement, a revamping of the profile. And indeed, one of the very positive developments, one of the very positive surprises of the past year was coming in Lithuania. Lithuania is a country which joined the European Union in 2004. We celebrated the 20 years of the EU membership last year with a lot of analysis and a lot of assessment. Lithuania is one of the countries where Social Democrats already had been in government before, but after a renewal process, after innovating a lot, after selecting new leaders, establishing a think tank. Let's underline that establishing a think tank was also an important part of this. Indeed, last year we arrived to a social democratic victory. And in this region, East Central Europe and the Baltics, of course, it's not an easy task. It's not a usual achievement to have such a result and then to form a government with a social democratic leadership. So for this reason, in order to highlight this really unusual achievement, which we would like to not only celebrate and acknowledge, but also make better known and allow others to learn from it, we thought that the progressive person of the year this time around is the Prime Minister of Lithuania, Gintautas Paluckas, who unfortunately couldn't come here to Brussels this time around, but he is connected with us through the video link, and I would like to invite him, Prime Minister of Lithuania, to address our audience. Prime Minister, welcome.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, brothers and sisters in arms. Thank you for this opportunity to address you, and I'm really sorry that I cannot attend the meeting in person, because we do have a couple of reforms running, and I need to put these proposals for our coalition partners and for the society as well. But I had a chance to listen for the speaker just some minutes ago, and I'd like to probably reiterate what was said. It's a new world, and the parties, left-wing and traditional right-wing, they need to catch up with a lot of new political, I wouldn't even call parties, they just grow from out of nowhere, these movements, and they usually try to strip traditional parties of their credibility, of their capability and intellectual ability to solve the people's problems, which are in a way in new patterns presented in economies, in the dominance of tech moguls and social networks, locking people in and just stripping them of their free will and things like that. But still in the content, there always will be the strong part and the weak part, the oppressor and the oppressed. So what we need actually in all member states and across the Europe is sometimes to get rid of our old dogmatic way of doing politics and just to try to bring people new ideas which were not probably tested, or try to get into some areas that were not usual for social democrats. I will not elaborate on Lithuanian social democrat success story. There are a lot of reasons for that, but we know that we at the moment in Europe, social democrats are outnumbered. But let's not lose hope. I see a lot of people longing for the social justice and for the credible solutions. Right-wing populists, usually they provide very easy answers for very complicated issues. And in some member states, people already had this feeling and had this taste of this kind of politics, and they, well, looking back to traditional social democratic parties that rarely fail. So once again, thank you for this award. Also, I consider it as a honorable burden, because once you awarded, you cannot bring the expectations lower. So I wish all of us best luck.
Thank you so much. Prime Minister, if you have a few more minutes to stay with us, I would indeed like to thank for saying that it's just the start to be the progressive person for FEPS, and indeed hopefully many good achievements are waiting for you. And you already gave us an interview. Our audience can read your answers, but I prepared a few follow-up questions because Lithuania has been in the news in the recent days by declaring an ambition to increase defense expenditure. And of course, this is not an easy debate in Europe. Would you like to give some explanation or advice on this matter?
I'm not sure if I'm in position to give any advice to other member states or other politicians coming from their political background. But it's not an easy debate, that's for sure, especially for the politicians coming from the left party, because usually we are, less hawkish towards the expenditure on defense. But in this case, what I meant saying, just to try to look at things in some, I would say, less dogmatic way, it's the actual thing what we did when we had to face the actual threat, geopolitical threat of having the neighbor. And you probably know that our neighbor is Belarus and Russia. So in this case, we had a choice, or to stick to traditional policies, telling that okay, let's stay on the same levels of defense spending and take care of other policies. But in this case, we made a choice to move forward with increasing defense expenditures with the cost of public debt, but also will be investing in people's needs in healthcare, in education, in culture, and things like that. So we managed actually to combine, at the cost of rising public debt, all needs of the wide society. Because in our countries, Baltic states, Finland, Poland, there is an anxiousness because of this constant threat from the East. And it brings the foreign direct investment down, it brings some people and makes them to diversify their portfolios, to invest abroad, to buy some apartments in some southern countries in Europe and so on. So this discussion was not easy, but the choice was made, and we can see the wide support of the whole society, not only the usual part supporting Social Democrats.
Thank you so much. I can tell you that FEPS will work more on defense in the coming period. So maybe at some point we can also welcome you in these discussions in Brussels or elsewhere in Europe. I would like to have a second question, not least because before becoming Prime Minister, you worked a lot at municipal level. And one of the biggest issues municipalities are facing in these times is the question of housing. And now, newly, the European Commission introduced a portfolio which also covers housing, but this was not really a competence of the EU before. What is your expectation regarding a potential contribution of the European Union to help solving burning issues regarding housing?
We need the financial instruments and legal regulation to make the housing affordable. It's as simple as that, because if it's left for municipalities with scarce resources, it usually, expected that the market will take care of it. But when the market takes care of it, it comes in some ugly ways. I mean, the price of housing rises, the Airbnb, so to call, patterns arises, and the one short stay patterns take place instead of long rent and things like that. So it was a matter of time for Europe to react on that, because we see the whole generations actually who cannot afford the proper housing, not even to buy, but to rent as well. So I think the steps on European level are necessary, because we have for sure different levels of probably affordability of housing, but the whole picture is getting darker and darker. It's worse and worse. So Europe needs to step up with a solidar effort to tackle this issue. If people do not have where to live, if they have no roof above their heads, they are pushed from the urban areas to economically weaker ones with lower salaries and so on. So this kind of reductive policies should be not encouraged, but it needs to be fought.
Thank you so much. And the last question would be about something that has already been mentioned by previous speakers, which is the multi-annual financial framework. Very soon, there will be a big debate in Europe, and for Lithuania, but also other countries in East Central Europe, I suppose the question of cohesion remains a very important one. What is your expectation, or if you want to express a wish, regarding the future of the cohesion policy as we are waiting for the proposals?
Well, I guess all incoming or coming policies are intertwined. The competition, the enlargement and cohesion are all in the same bucket because it will require the resources that should be in the multi-annual monetary fund. So in this case, there will be fierce competition for the needs of the each member state, and these needs actually differ quite a lot. We have in Lithuania specific ones as well, with closing down the nuclear plant, which was part of agreement on Lithuania entering the European Union and so on. But what we have on our agenda right now, it's two things that we need to take care about. It's first of all the defense issue. I mean, we are financing it with our own means and resources available, and via public debt, but it is at low levels because we tried to keep it for decades at this low level. Still, this European effort, solidar effort, is needed to tackle the geopolitical risks, because it's eastern flank of Europe anyway. And the other thing which we see as a obvious threat for the unity of European Union is competitiveness. Now this red tape and overregulation makes the separate countries to work on separate agendas and to provide subsidies to attract foreign direct investments and technologies. But in this case, we see the widening gap between member states in terms of salaries, in terms of social standards and things like that. So at least these two parts need to be taken care of on the European level. And if we do that, we'll be able to talk about other cohesion areas as well.
Thank you very much. I don't want to take your time. We are absolutely grateful for being with us today, and we hope that it will be physically possible at a later stage. And I need to show you that the prize is not just a hypothetical one, but it's very concrete. Indeed, every time the Progressive Yearbook is an occasion to hand over this. The camera is there, right? So they hand this over to the awarded personality, and I would like to ask our president, João Rodrigues, to hand it over. But since you're not with us, former Commissioner would take it over and hopefully deliver it to you in Vilnius when the opportunity comes. Maria?
So, my pleasure. And let me say a word to the Prime Minister, because we start talking when you were a leader of the party and the mayor, and now we are so proud to have you as a Prime Minister, and we understand why Social Democrats have won elections in Lithuania. is because you have a challenging situation with war in our borders, but you manage to find a solution to spend on defense because we need, but also to keep high priority for social spending. Like that, you have the support of your people. So congratulations, and that's why you deserve this award.
Thank you.
And now I'm so pleased that we are represented here with our good friend, former Commissioner for Health, Vytenis Andriukaitis, so a very brave also politician in Lithuania and in Europe. And so you are properly representing the Prime Minister. So many thanks again.
Thank you so
and
much.
you really deserve.
I am
Lithuania
proud
Social
to hand over
Democrats
this
really
award
deserve
to
it.
my friend Gintautas. It's so important and excellent moment in my life.
Good.
Like always, to see the youngest who are awarded. It is so brave, so inspiring. All of us. You know, I'm very young also, but it is
Exactly.
much more. We need to support our youngest to be very motivated, to be very brave, and of course to be very progressive once again.
Thank you again. Huh?
Thank you.
And really congratulations to Lithuanian Social Democrats. We are very, very
Thank you.
proud.
Thank you. It's our common victory. Come on, colleagues. Come on. Please look. You need to do the same.
Yes.
Now it's a very, very important moment in Germany. We can help you. Please follow our example. Of course, no, but let's feel, strength of solidarity. Strength of solidarity. As never before, we need strength of solidarity, especially in our group, especially keeping our eyes in all national parliaments. We need, as never before, to create strong dialogue with all our national parliaments. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to encourage us to think about treaty changes, about the future. Because we have only two options. Only two options. Or it will go into second Yalta, or we will go into second Helsinki. But because of Willy Brandt, we need to move into second Helsinki, keeping in mind global situation, because we need to overcome such tragedy which is now in our eastern borders. But we need to think, and that is up to us now to fight and to see, and not to be to go into times of Cold War. Now we need to build opportunities, bridges, and to think about new second Helsinki.
Yes. And with bravery, as this is the key word opening our yearbook. Bravery.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Vytenis. Really great.
Thank you so
To have
much.
you.
Thank you.
So you keep now your
Yes.
word.
Thank you so much. I think it really was a highlight. And congratulations again. And then we take your words with us. The second Helsinki, I think, will resonate. And then we will work on this because human rights was in the center of the concept in the 1970s. And this is what perhaps we don't talk enough today. Now, there is a little time which we wanted to devote to Q&A because there is no event. Sorry?
We just have the short video of the presentation of the Prime Minister.
There's a video.
Yeah. About the Prime Minister. We can play just now. It's very short.
My colleagues prepared a short video about the Prime Minister, which you would like to see. All this will be uploaded on the website, so the event will preserve the website and all the materials you will see, just like the yearbook itself. The yearbook was opened on the website at the time when the president was speaking at the start, and then afterwards, of course, all the video materials will be shared too. Now, Q&A. I'm right. But this is going to be an unusual one, because normally the Q&A at the end of an event is that the audience is asking questions and then the panelists answer. And this time the Q&A would be that I'm asking the question and the audience can come with brief answers. There will be 2 questions, and I would like to invite brief statements. Question number 1, and I will invite 5 persons from the audience if you signal your interest in the yellow hand, the usual way. So what do you think was the most important lesson from 2024? Probably you suspect what's going to be the second question as well, but let's now stick to 2024 retrospective. I would like to see 5 hands, and I will call for 1-minute statements. If you would like to highlight something, you can also say you agree with the speaker which you heard, or you want to draw a conclusion from some developments which you saw in the previous year, or you already read in the book. Number 1, thank you so much for being brave. I think bravery is the starting point.
Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to be here because I represented Ukraine. I'm Ukrainian, but I live here and I work with Council of Europe and expert of Council of Europe for Ukraine. And for me, it's very important that today you also discuss this topic and all overview of last year, coordinate towards Ukraine also. And thank you very much for solidarity, for every challenge which you see and try to support. And according that also Maria said about a new challenge of Trump approach, I want to ask you your view, just your mind about how do you see the scenario of Trump approach towards Ukraine? Because there are a lot of discussion about this one. It's like open question, and just right now Trump also stopped all financial support for NGO. It's from USAID. They stopped all working project, and now a lot of NGO is so worried and upset about it because it's really necessary project, and they are stopped now. It's one of the challenge which we have just right now. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. Question is understood. While Maria is thinking about the answer, let me just say that indeed, FEPS in 2023 produced a book about Europe and the war in Ukraine. It's now being translated to Ukrainian. So in an updated version is being translated to Ukrainian. So we are trying to contribute and help developing the progressive discussion. Maria, would you like to say now or later?
I prefer to wait.
Maybe we can wait 2 or 3 more questions if there is any, or statements, and then the president would comment. Yes?
Thank you very much indeed for this chance to speak up here. My most imposing issue was that we had about 80% of democracies voting last year, elections, which I call very simply quantitative democracies. And I wonder if we can continue like that what Alexis de Tocqueville already called the tyranny of the majority seems to be more and more taking over, particularly in plutocracies, tendencies we have seen all over the world. And I'm afraid that the American model is taking over even, or at least influencing European elections more and more. And I would feel we'd have to go back to the people in the sense of democracy, what I call interpopular instead of international. It's not between nations anymore. We have to work together between people. Interpopular is a word I want to raise here. And I think
quality of democracy.
Yes, populus in Latin or demos in Greek. I think here we have a chance now to go back to the people and really come back to the main ideas, not direct democracy, but not quantitative democracy through elections only. We have to include more the civil society. And here I would say this is interpopular, not international. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Yes, one more question at the center.
For me, I think we also think that the right wing is because of the increasing inequality. And I think that we are still not uncovering too much what the instruments of this inequality is. I've been working on the financial sector, and I heard today, we don't know how it's going to be financed, but again, it's the private sector that is being called on to finance all these projects. But don't forget, they want to get much more money out than in. And it goes at the expense very often of workers, climate, consumers. And I think it's important that we really tackle the instruments of inequality.
Which might mean a bigger MFF. I'm translating. Zita, thank you for joining.
Yeah, it's a privilege to be as the founding mother of FEPS to be here. Actually, we had several elections we spoke about. And we get great success, like the case of Lithuania, but we had great defeats. And of course, the European election, meanwhile, we could stay the second biggest group of the European Parliament, but this European Parliament is completely different than before. All, as a feminist, of course, I will say that all the rights that we achieved for women and our sisters long years ago, actually, are in danger. If you look at sexual rights and reproductive health, you could not even ask a question during the hearing of the commissioners. So I would say we really need to have a lesson learned from this European election. We really need to change policy. We have to go back to the grassroots. We really need to talk to ordinary people because they are unsatisfied with us. That's why we are losing the power in a lot of other countries. I could cry. We have only 4 commissioners. They are all brave, by the way. 2 women and 2 men. 2 women are in a great executive vice president position. But we lost a lot of great competence, great people who cannot help any longer, but can help, of course, within FEPS. So I would say it's a very, very challenging time. And with Trump, it really shows that the backlash is at our neck. So I think it's a wake-up call for us, for European socialists and Democrats, to start to think, to do things differently. And we need to know how to sell the product. Because the problem is that even we do the best for people, they have no clue about it. They have no clue about it. So that's why I would say it's a very, very challenging time. So we really need to do things completely differently. And women should stay in the center. Because if we lose women voters, we are in deep
Thank you, thank you. Round of applause. And Andrew.
Hello. Yes, Andrew Watt from the ETY. Pretty much answering your question, I hope, László, is something that's indicative of, it started to happen in 2024, but is indicative of what's happening now. I would say the Draghi report. So towards the end of last year, Draghi issued a report that, even if it was initiated by von der Leyen, was something which contained a lot of elements that I think progressives could latch onto, could use in their arguments. A different way of defining competitiveness, for example, insistence that wasn't about driving down wages, insistence on the need for massive investments. So a lot of positive things, and as part of that, issues about deregulation, about speeding up decision-making processes. So what do we see now in 2025? A lot of the first issues that I mentioned, the ones that progressives can latch onto, are being sidelined. And what we're seeing now is this deregulation agenda really sort of, as it were, taking over the whole discussion. And Business Europe now pushing for quite massive deregulation to such an extent that it will be a threat, I think, to to other objectives, to social objectives, to ecological objectives, and that to me is a little bit symptomatic of the change we've had over actually now quite a recent period.
Thank you very much, Maria. You have a lot of questions on your table. Do you have a microphone as well? I think you are getting a microphone.
I must say that you are not informing me that this is part of the game, but well. But okay, no, many thanks for your questions. And look, I think all of us, we feel, as Gabi was saying some minutes ago, that we are moving to a new era and getting a sense that there is a risk that this change over a new era is a backward evolution and not a forward-looking. This is something new in our lives. Nevertheless, we remain progressives. So this means that we need really to keep the hope that we can not only deal with this, but coming with a real alternative. Right now, we have a lot of people trying to assess the implications of the Trump agenda and thinking, how can I survive in this? How can I resist? But I think we should be more ambitious. We need to start building a convincing alternative from now on. And we have many arguments. So let me start with the difficult question you came. This is the 1 billion question. What will be the role of Trump when it comes to the sequence of the war in Ukraine? Look, we still have different scenarios, but my sense is that there is a certain moment that will force the United States, with their military power, to push for a ceasefire. This will come. And this might come sooner than you think. Nevertheless, for me, this is not the only question. It is not only the when. The question is in which terms this ceasefire will be settled. Because if this is settled under Trump leadership, this will not be a fair ceasefire. And this will be treated as imposing something not involving the Ukrainian people properly, not involving Europe properly, and not respecting the democratic rights of the Ukraine. Because we can never forget that the reason behind this war is because the Ukrainian people was brave enough to fight for democracy and European membership with a very clear choice and message. So the question for me is, which are the terms of this ceasefire? Because under Trump leadership, they would not be fair, they would not be democratic, and that they can be used to turn the peace in Ukraine in a kind of business opportunity, plus reviving far-right forces, conservative forces in Ukraine. So that's why, by the way, we as a progressive family, we are conducting a very important operation to support progressive forces inside Ukraine, because they will be a key actor when the ceasefire comes. So this is. But then I have a second argument, replying to other questions raised, is that, and we saw this, by the way, in the Lithuanian case, how can Social Democrats get the majority support of their people when we are in a war situation? Well, there is a very clear choice. Is even if we agree that we need to build up defense capacity in Europe, we agree with this, but in no case we can accept that this will be used as an argument to sacrifice our commitment regarding social expenditure, access to public services, and going on with the investments of the future for the green transition. So This is something we will never accept to be sacrificed. And this is the secret why we can keep the support of people. Which brings us to the issue raised also in the first panel. We need to find out financial solutions. But let me also clear about this. Europe has the resources. We have the necessary resources. We just need to have the right instruments to channel the resources from the private side and public side to meet these new priorities. And so this means vision, ambition, political will. And let's start seeing, by the way, the next meeting of the European Council already next Monday. Then there is another thing raised by the other question is about democracy. Because we see that our democratic fabric is under pressure with new tools which go in an acceptable way. The Romanian case is showing this clearly. We cannot be in the hands neither of TikTok, manipulated by Russian actors, nor in the hands of ex-Twitter. We cannot accept to be in front of Elon Musk in a rally with the AfD leader all together. This is totally unacceptable. So from my viewpoint, this means that we Europeans, we need to defend our democracies, our right to plural discussion, to real democratic discussion and choice, by building something we don't have, but we must have, which is, I could call, critical infrastructure to ensure that our media system supports democracy. The media system is crucial for democracy to work. And we cannot have our media system in the hands of big platforms, AI out of control. And this is even more urgent when we understand, after the announcements of Trump, that in alliance with the top entrepreneurs of the digital area, is planning to develop the digital capacity of the United States without hindrances, without regulations. Is just scrapping the recent Biden regulation on AI. You want to have free hand to use the digital tools and AI to get control on almost everything. Economy, our social life, and our political decisions. And this we cannot accept. So my point is, in the end, we need really to work with our allies across the world. This is not a moment where we can fall in the trap of we are the West and then that is the rest, or the North, or the South. No. We need to find out where are the progressive forces across the world who are now very worried with the new announcements made by Trump, who don't want to fall into a new Cold War between the United States and China. So we need to make alliances, all these forces, and come up with a real alternative, because we know there is a far right being organized in all pieces, program, media tools, finance, political connections. They are organizing themselves, but we are also in conditions to organize ourselves at a high level. And as I told you at the beginning when I made my opening, you can count on FEPS to work with our family, our progressive forces, to come up with a full-fledged alternative, progressive European alternative to this Trump's agenda. So this is my reaction from now, but let's go on talking. So FEPS is a big hub of progressive forces, and we count on you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maria. I think nothing needs to be said about the substance after the conclusions of the President. Please take your copy of the yearbook, but also if you find other FEPS publications interesting, then you can pick and choose. I think there was consensus in the room about the need to know our strength where it is and then work and build on it. And indeed to maintain a sense of humor. That was also part of the consensus. Because of this, I was wondering what exactly is the symbol of these times? What is the symbol of the times in which we are in? If you think for a moment, I show you. That's the red tie of the famous person. So you have to wear it like this. And I can do that because of the Madonna microphone, right? It allows you to have actually two ties. So if you, exactly, and it needs to be longer. That's also important, that the red tie is longer than the normal tie if you want to suit the fashion of the day. The only change which we also need to implement, that whenever we wear the Madonna microphone, we have to rename it, right? Because Madonna was very bad to the Americans. She's not respectful, so we need to find a new name, and it needs to be the name. But I hope you enjoyed the event. We also looked for new authors for the next yearbook, and I think we can continue informally outside with the modest reception, which we serve with some healthy food and light drinks as well. Thank you.